The thing that haunts you isn't failure. It's the life you never dared to live. The version of yourself that's suffocating under your comfortable choices. Your unlived potential doesn't make noise. It watches, silently indicting every time you chose safety over becoming. Look around your life right now. That career you settled into because it was secure. That relationship you maintain because starting over feels impossible. That dream you've reduced to a someday hobby. When was the last time you felt truly alive? When did you last feel the electric current of genuine risk coursing through your body? We've been sold the greatest lie of modern existence, that safety equals happiness, that comfort equals success, that the elimination of suffering is the path to fulfillment. But what if the exact opposite is true? What if your comfortable routines are slowly killing the person you were meant to become? What if your avoidance of necessary pain is precisely what keeps you trapped in mediocrity? What if the ghost of your potential is growing more substantial with each passing day of safety seeking? The ancient Greeks had a word for this, akrasia, the state of acting against your better judgment, of knowing the right thing to do, but lacking the courage to do it. You know exactly what would make your soul come alive. You've always known. But knowledge without action becomes a form of self-betrayal. And betrayal always demands payment, usually in the form of quiet desperation that hollows you from within. Today, we're going to confront the price of your comfort addiction, the bill that comes due when you choose safety over growth, again and again and again. Remember that idea you had years ago, the one that made your heart race? I wonder who executed it while you were playing it safe. I wonder how they feel waking up every morning, living the life you were too afraid to pursue. Think about the last time someone asked you what you're passionate about. Did you struggle to answer? Or worse, did you answer with something that once lit you up, but that you haven't actively pursued in months, years? That hesitation, that flicker of shame, that's the sound of your potential gasping for air. The prison of comfort comes with Netflix, good wine, and just enough distraction to forget you're imprisoned. The most dangerous prison is the one with comfortable furniture. You've decorated yours beautifully, with reasonable excuses, with practical decisions, with the approval of others who love you exactly as you are, who never challenge you to become more. Your prison cell has Netflix, good wine, and just enough vacation time to keep you from rebellion. Meanwhile, something is dying inside you. You feel it in those quiet moments right before sleep, when the distractions fall away. That heaviness in your chest isn't random. It's the weight of the unlived life pressing down on you. It's the burden of knowing that you're capable of more, much more, than you're currently expressing. Your fear of pain created a pain far worse, the ache of unfulfilled potential. Who gets mad when you grow, when you stretch beyond what they expect of you? Their discomfort with your evolution is the tax of transformation. But you've been avoiding that tax, haven't you? Keeping yourself small to keep others comfortable. Drop fire emoji if this hit you. If you felt that knife twist in your gut because you recognize yourself in these words. Joseph Campbell, the great mythologist, identified a pattern across cultures and throughout history, what he called the hero's journey. At its core is a universal truth. There is no transformation without the death of comfort. There is no hero without the abandonment of safety. There is no rebirth without the willingness to first be destroyed. The ancient rite of passage existed in virtually every traditional culture for a reason. Young men and women were subjected to trials, often painful ones, because our ancestors understood something we've forgotten. Comfort is the enemy of becoming. Safety is the adversary of self-discovery. The necessary ordeal reveals who we truly are. Pain wasn't a bug in their system. It was the feature. They knew what you've forgotten. Growth hurts. The Spartans had a word, agoge, their rigorous education system designed not primarily to teach facts, but to forge character through strategic hardship. They understood that potential is not unveiled through comfort, but through challenge, not through safety, but through suffering with purpose. Consider the metamorphosis of a butterfly. We focus on the beautiful final form, but rarely acknowledge the violent transformation required to achieve it. Inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar doesn't simply grow wings, it completely dissolves. Its entire body liquefies, breaking down into a cellular soup before reconstructing itself into something entirely new. This radical unmaking is not optional, it is essential. It doesn't add wings to its old body, it melts into soup first. You can't become without dissolving who you are. Yet modern life has taught us to avoid this dissolution at all costs. We cling to outdated versions of ourselves because the alternative, the messy, painful transformation, terrifies us. We would rather remain caterpillars than endure the crushing pressure of the chrysalis. The gap between who you are and who you could be isn't measured in skills, it's measured in courage. Friedrich Nietzsche captured this paradox when he wrote about the three metamorphoses of the spirit, how the spirit becomes a camel, the camel a lion, and the lion at last a child. The camel willingly takes on burdens. The lion says no to what no longer serves. The child represents creative rebirth. But notice what happens between each stage: complete transformation, not comfortable evolution. The death of one form enables the birth of another. This pattern reveals an uncomfortable truth. You cannot become who you are meant to be while remaining who you currently are. Something must die for something greater to be born, and that death, the death of comfortable routines, of safe identities, of known territories, that death requires courage few are willing to cultivate. There exists within each of us a shadowy figure I call the comfortable saboteur. This is not the inner critic that tells you you're not good enough. This is far more insidious. The comfortable saboteur whispers reasonable thoughts. You've had a long day. You deserve rest. When your potential demands effort. You could fail and lose everything when your soul craves risk. People might reject the real you when authenticity is knocking. The comfortable saboteur doesn't speak in obvious lies. That's what makes it so effective. It speaks in half-truths that sound like wisdom. It cloaks fear in the language of self-care. It disguises stagnation as patience. It paints mediocrity as being realistic. You didn't protect yourself from failure. You protected yourself from greatness. And here's the most devastating part. Our entire society has become an amplification system for the comfortable saboteur. We're surrounded by messaging that equates discomfort with danger, that frames challenge as trauma, that treats the avoidance of pain as wisdom rather than what it often is, cowardice dressed in therapeutic language. Pause here, take a breath. Think about the most recent decision where you chose comfort over growth. Not a year ago, this week, yesterday. What did your comfortable saboteur whisper that made sense in the moment? How does it feel now? Consider how we've transformed the concept of self-care from its original meaning, difficult practices that foster genuine well-being, into its current incarnation, whatever feels good in the moment. True self-care often feels terrible in the moment. The workout that leaves you gasping for breath, the difficult conversation that makes your heart pound, the financial sacrifice that secures your future freedom, the discipline of saying no to distraction and yes to creation. You owe yourself the difficult path. You owe yourself the necessary suffering that forges greatness. Comfort isn't the absence of suffering. It's the postponement of necessary growth. The philosopher Nassim Taleb introduced the concept of anti-fragility, the property of things that don't merely withstand stress and difficulty, but actually get stronger because of it. Human muscles exhibit this quality. When torn through resistance training, they rebuild stronger than before. This is not just a physical principle, but a psychological and spiritual one as well. Yet we've been conditioned to avoid the very stressors that would make us anti-fragile. We seek comfort so persistently that we've become increasingly fragile, unable to withstand even minor difficulties without breaking. Our potential dies not from one fatal blow, but from the slow poison of excessive comfort. You owe yourself the difficult path. You owe yourself the challenge that reveals who you truly are. Safety doesn't preserve your potential, it pickles it. The Roman Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort, deliberately enduring cold, hunger, and public embarrassment, not out of masochism, but because they understood that fear of discomfort is far more dangerous than discomfort itself. Seneca, despite being one of Rome's wealthiest men, regularly practiced poverty, wearing simple clothes, eating plain food, sleeping on a hard mat, to remind himself that the things he feared losing were not essential to his well-being. What would change if you deliberately sought out the discomfort you've been avoiding? If you stopped organizing your life around the elimination of challenge and instead pursued the challenges that would forge you into someone stronger, more capable, more alive? You owe yourself the difficult path. You owe yourself the journey that makes the ghost of your potential flesh and bone again. Here is one empowering insight. Comfort is not the absence of struggle, but the absence of meaning. The reason your comfortable life feels empty is not because it contains too much hardship, but because it contains too little purpose. The path of potential is not about seeking suffering for its own sake. It's about embracing the specific challenges that stand between you and your most authentic expression. The worst pain isn't failing. It's succeeding at things that don't matter. Who are you without your comfortable excuses? Without the story that you're just being realistic? Without the identity of the person who plays it safe? You've constructed an entire self around your limitations. You introduce yourself by what you cannot do, will not risk, could never become. You wear your constraints like armor, protecting you from the terror of possibility. But what if you're not actually the cautious, practical person you've convinced yourself you are? What if that's just the disguise your fear wears to make itself socially acceptable? Let the heaviness of that sink in. The version of you reading this right now is actively preventing another version from being born. Your comfortable self is killing your authentic self, one safe choice at a time. Is that protection worth the price? Ask yourself, what terrifies you more? Failing at something meaningful, or succeeding at something that would require you to become someone new? Your ghost of potential doesn't haunt you because it's dead. It haunts you because it's still alive. The most dangerous moment in the hero's journey is what Campbell called the refusal of the call, when the protagonist rejects the invitation to adventure, choosing the familiar prison over the uncertain path. But notice what happens in every great story when the hero refuses. The stakes increase. The problem intensifies. The very thing they fear comes looking for them anyway. Your potential doesn't simply evaporate when ignored. It curdles. It becomes resentment, depression, midlife crisis, deathbed regret. Who in your life benefits from your continued smallness? Who gets uncomfortable when you begin to break free from your limitations? Their resistance is evidence you're on the right path. You owe yourself the difficult path. Not tomorrow, not someday, but today, in this moment, with the next choice you make. You owe yourself the difficult path, even when everyone around you chooses comfort. You owe yourself the difficult path, because on it, you'll discover who you actually are beneath the comfortable lies. There comes a point when the pain of remaining the same finally exceeds the pain of transformation. Many wait for this threshold to be forced upon them, through crisis, illness, loss. But what if you chose it voluntarily? What if you stopped waiting for life to break you open and instead broke yourself open intentionally, purposefully? The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard wrote that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. That vertigo you feel when contemplating real change isn't a warning to retreat. It's evidence you're finally approaching the edge of your self-imposed limitations, the boundary beyond which your potential waits. The person you've settled for is killing the person you're meant to become. Let that sink into your bones. Remember that ghost we talked about at the beginning? Your unlived potential? It doesn't have to remain a ghost. It can become flesh and blood and bone. It can become you. But that transformation demands a price. The death of comfort, the surrender of safety, the willingness to be a beginner again, to look foolish, to fail publicly, to feel the full intensity of being alive rather than the numbing predictability of mere existence. The ancient wisdom traditions all point to the same truth. What we resist persists. What we embrace transforms. Your fear of discomfort, your addiction to safety, these don't disappear when avoided. They grow stronger. They claim more territory in your life. They shrink your world until your existence becomes so small it can hardly be called living. But when you turn toward the necessary suffering, when you voluntarily pick up the burden of becoming, something miraculous happens. The weight doesn't crush you, it strengthens you. The uncertainty doesn't destroy you, it awakens you. The rejection doesn't diminish you, it clarifies you. There is a version of you that exists beyond the comfortable prison you've built, a version that emerges only through challenge, only through risk, only through the willingness to be transformed. This version hasn't given up on you, even if you've given up on it. Today can be different. This moment can be the pivot, not through grand declarations, but through one small choice to embrace discomfort for the sake of growth, to step toward fear rather than away from it, to choose the difficult path not because it's difficult, but because it leads somewhere worth going. Leave a comment below with the words, "I choose the necessary suffering," not as a masochistic oath, but as a commitment to your own becoming, as a declaration that you are willing to pay the price that potential demands. This conversation about the death of potential is just the beginning. In the coming weeks, we'll be exploring the specific practices that turn comfortable caterpillars into fully expressed butterflies. We'll examine the daily rituals of history's greatest artists, thinkers, and leaders, not to blindly imitate them, but to extract the essence of their commitment to discomfort for the sake of creation. How do you identify your specific necessary suffering, the precise challenges that would transform rather than merely traumatize you? How do you build the courage muscle that makes choosing the difficult path not just possible, but natural? How do you surround yourself with others who demand your growth rather than enable your comfort? These questions form the map of becoming, a map we'll unfold together. Subscribe now and turn on notifications to join a community of people committed to choosing the difficult path, not out of masochism, but out of devotion to what's possible, to who's possible. Your potential hasn't abandoned you. It's simply waiting for you to demonstrate that you want it badly enough to be uncomfortable, to be uncertain, to be transformed. They say that on your deathbed, you won't regret the things you did nearly as much as the things you didn't do, the chances you didn't take, the version of yourself you never allowed to exist. But here's what they don't tell you. You don't have to wait for your deathbed to feel those regrets. You experience micro-deaths every day, in the flinch before you retreat to safety, in the moment your inspiration crashes against your fear, in the silent surrender to maybe someday. The philosopher Martin Heidegger spoke of authentic existence, a life lived in full awareness of your finitude, your limitations, and most importantly, your freedom to choose within those constraints. Authenticity isn't found in comfort. It emerges precisely when comfort is sacrificed for meaning. Your necessary suffering is calling, not with the thunderous voice of crisis, but with the quiet persistence of truth. It speaks in the restless night, in the unexplained sadness, in the nameless longing for something more. The ghost of your unlived potential doesn't want to haunt you. It wants to become you. But that metamorphosis requires the death of your comfortable self, the dissolution of who you are to reveal who you could be. Your terror isn't warning you away from the path. It's marking the exact spot where your transformation begins. What terrifies you most is precisely where your liberation waits. Your unlived potential is screaming in the silence of your comfortable choices. Listen, we aren't meant to die comfortable. We're meant to die used up, transformed, having extracted every ounce of our potential through necessary suffering. The world doesn't need more comfortable people. It needs the fire of your authentic becoming. Your comfort was never protection. It was always the cage.